Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and today we're doing something a little bit different. So I've seen a lot of people doing something on the booktube community that I really want to give a try, and that thing is annotating your books. So there's a couple reasons why I would like to try this. First, in terms of like this channel, it'll make it a lot easier to remember what I thought about the books that I read. So when I go to put together my monthly reading wrap-ups, a lot of the time I will remember like kind of like my general thoughts and feelings about a book, but I won't necessarily remember all the specific elements that led to me either liking a book or disliking a book, or I'll remember all the things that like caught my attention that I would want to like point out to people who might potentially be interested in reading that book. So that's like part of the reason, is that I can make some notes as I go. And then the other reason is that I want to be able to get more out of the books that I read. And this is partly because I'm trying to write my own book. So I want to be able to identify the things in books that I think are good that make them good, and that are elements that I would like to include or like remember how they did certain things when it comes to like writing my own book. So for example, the book that I've decided to do my first annotations on is The Fellowship of the Ring. And obviously there are a lot of things that are done really well in this book, but one of like the biggest things Tolkien's known for is his world building. So that's one of the things that I want to look for while I'm reading this book, is like examples of world building and how he uses it to better connect the reader to the stories of like the characters and like just like what everything that's happening in this world. So that is like my sort of main second reason for doing this. And then also like I just kind of want to try it. Like it looks fun. I like looking at like the finished result with all of the tabs in the text block. I think it looks really nice. And yeah, so for those reasons I'm gonna give it a go. As I've said, I'm going to be using Fellowship as my first book, and that's just because this is one of my favorite books. I think it's extremely well written, and pretty much all of the elements in here are like well done. So I think it will be a good book to like, I just like the prose is so good that I think there'll be a lot of things that I want to tab and remember. And I think there's a lot of elements in here that, I mean, it's kind of like the father of modern fantasy. Like a lot of modern fantasy, most of them have some sort of like roots or inspiration, or inspired by something that was inspired by Lord of the Rings. So I think it's a good fantasy to make my first like kind of closer study of. And also this year I needed, well, I didn't need to, but I wanted to do another Lord of the Rings reread, so it just works out perfectly that I was wanting to read this, and I think I'll be able to get a lot out of it. So that is the plan. I'm going to use Fellowship of the Ring. I probably will eventually do the other two books, Two Towers and Return of the King. I do have a bind up of all three of the books together, which is actually how Tolkien originally wanted it published, but it's kind of expensive and I don't want to write in it. And these editions, while they're not cheap, at least this first one I've had for a long time, and I feel like I'm not going to be upset about writing in this. So in terms of materials, I've got these post-it notes. They're like little ones, but part of the reason that I chose these ones is that they have the colored end, but then the other part of it is clear. So if I put it in a book and it ends up being on top of the words, I can still see through it to read the words. The next time I read the book, I don't have to like take them up to read the words, and then they'll lose stickiness over time and need to be replaced. So that's what I like about these. I would like to have some more like subtle colors, like these are all quite bright, but that's okay. I think it will be fine. And then in terms of like the writing utensil, I'm not quite bold enough to go in with pen yet, so I'm gonna go in with a pencil. I've got myself a 3B here, so the pencil part will be quite dark so that it will show up better. And I also think that like the style of this book will go better with like pencil writings than pen. Like, I don't know, this like cover and like edition is very kind of like soft, the aesthetic, and I feel like a pen, like a dark pen ink would contrast that too much. So I think the graphite pencil is going to be the way to go to best complement the aesthetic of this book. All right, so I've got all my materials ready to go. So let's go ahead and get reading and get annotated. Okay, so the first thing that I'm doing to get prepared to annotate this book is just setting up a little bit of a key really quick, because I've got a bunch of colors in this little palette, so I need to decide what colors are going to mean what. So I've got the first category that I'm doing is foods. Food is mentioned a lot in Lord of the Rings, especially from the Hobbit perspective, because as we know, they love food and will eat 6 meals a day if they can get them. So that is one thing that I'm interested in marking, and also because I am looking for references of food and fantasy for an upcoming project that will hopefully you'll be seeing soon. Next up, we've got yellow, and I'm using that one for world building elements. There is obviously so much world building in Lord of the Rings, and it's so in-depth and detailed, so I want to be able to mark elements that I find really interesting. And then for green, I'm going to use that to mark pieces of prose that I really like. Tolkien's writing is very sophisticated, and while I don't think I would write in quite that style for my own book, I definitely couldn't write that well, but I would like to be able to mark parts of it that I really enjoy or that I find inspiring. And then the blue I've got for characterization, so just elements of the text that I find are really good for developing the characters and exploring their personalities. And then finally we just got purple, and that's just for others, so any other things that I just find interesting, things that make me giggle a little bit, or that just, I don't know, that I just find interesting, that's all. So that is the palette that I'm going to be using. So let's go ahead and read the prologue concerning hobbits. Alright, so it's just a little bit later. I have finished the first chapter. Well, not really chapter, it's kind of like the prologue, the concerning hobbits part. Yeah, it's called a prologue. And I've made a couple of annotations. We've got three little flags in there. I'm not sure if I'm sticking them out far enough, but I don't want them to go past like the edge of the hardback, so I think this is good. So I've got two different colors. I've got a couple things for world building, and then one that's just kind of an other, and that's just kind of my notes on like the final page here concerning my thoughts of like the whole kind of chapter. So the things that I've pointed out in this chapter is mostly just talking about how Tolkien's style of world building is like a little bit different from like modern fantasy. Like I don't think you would see like a full chapter of just like world building thrown in at the beginning of like a modern fantasy, and like if you did see that, people would be like, oh, this is lazy world building, it should be like not lazy world building, but like lazy storytelling, like it should be show don't tell. But this older style is like people don't seem to mind it as much, which I think is interesting. And I think one of the reasons I think it works so well is kind of like you could skip this chapter and just read the rest of the book and you wouldn't really feel like you were missing anything. This is kind of like a bonus for people who are more interested in going in depth. So yeah, those are kind of the thoughts that I concluded on that. But so far I'm enjoying it. I do think that the pencil is the choice to go with. I just think it looks really nice on this type of paper. And going by like, the paper is like thick-ish, but I do also feel like if I wrote on this type of paper with the pen that I have, which is like kind of like an inkier pen, that it would bleed into the fibers of the paper and be really messy, and I don't want that, so I'm gonna stick with the pencil, even though some people would say like, oh, just commit, just go for it with the pen, but I don't think that's gonna be appropriate for this type of paper and the aesthetic that I'm going for. So it is now the next day, and I've made a little bit of progress on Fellowship. I am 2 chapters in now. I've read A Long Expected Party, and I think it's called Shadows of the Past, The Shadow of the Past. And I've made quite a few little notations, as you can see. I've got kind of like a variety of things tabbed here, some stuff about like the characters, specifically now that we're getting into like actually meeting like Frodo and kind of learning more about him. And then in the last chapter, Shadow of the Past, there's quite a bit of world building because that's kind of where Gandalf and Frodo are like sitting in his sitting room, and Gandalf's telling him about like the One Ring and the whole like story behind that. And we get one of my favorite quotes. Let me see if I can find it. Oh yes, here it is. And this one's it's also used in the movie, but it says, "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." And I don't know, I feel like that's just like such a good quote, especially like, I don't know, in like the context of this story, like it just makes so much sense. And I always find that quote to be very powerful. But yeah, so Frodo has just made the decision that he has to leave the Shire in order to protect its inhabitants. And I did like tab some stuff around that because we were seeing how strong and like brave Frodo is, and like the strength of his inner like determination to protect the Shire that he loves so much. And Sam is gonna go with him. But yeah, so that's as far as I've gotten. I'll probably try to do quite a bit more reading before I give another update. And yeah, so far I'm really enjoying this annotating process. It definitely allows me to like think more, or like encourages me to think more about like the stuff that I'm reading. I've been doing kind of like some like summation or like thoughts after the chapters, and yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. So now up to about a page 150, and the tabbing is going well. I love the way it looks in the, I don't know what you call it, like the opposite of the spine, like the open text block part. But I've run into a problem, and that I have run out of the green note things. Those are the ones that I was using for good or interesting prose. So I mean, it's not a surprise that that's the first one that I ran out of, because Tolkien and Lord of the Rings is known for its really good prose. So I have ordered some new ones, but it was kind of hard. I couldn't find this exact set. It's just like flags from Post-it, but it seems like they only sell like a 5 set now. So I got that one, and hopefully the green will be the same color. And it also had this yellow one, which is one that I'm also nearly out of, because that's the one for world building. And I'm also running low on the pink, which I'm using for songs and stuff. So I might have to tone down a little bit of the tabbing just so that I can make it to the end of the book without having to buy a bazillion tabs. But I did also buy some, like a big set of like a bunch of different tabs that aren't like these same ones. They're colored all the way through, but they're transparent. So hopefully the colored part will be transparent enough that you can still like read through it, because I'm enjoying myself so much tabbing this book that I will probably do at least the next, the rest of the Lord of the Rings series. But I also would like to be able to do it for books that I'm pretty invested in. So I'm not sure what I'll do next. Probably Robin Hobb. That's something that I think I'd be able to get a lot out of doing that too. But yeah, I'm gonna have to, I kind of want to read more tonight, but without the green tabs, I'm gonna have to figure out something else to mark those spots. I'm sure I can come up with something though. All right, friends, we were in luck today, because yesterday I ran out of the green tabs. Today I ran out of the yellow tabs that I was using for marking world building. However, the package has arrived, and it should be containing more tabs. So I'm gonna go and open it, and hopefully they're the right colors. Okay, new tabs. I thought the yellow ones were in here, but apparently they're not. Okay, so I was thinking that the yellow one that I was missing was gonna be in this new set, but it's not. So I guess I'm gonna switch to orange for world building. It's not super ideal to have to change it partway through, but there's not much I can do about that now, unfortunately, so it'll be what it will be. And then I also just got some more pencil leads because I decided to switch to a mechanical pencil because I got tired of sharpening my pencil all the time. But the leads that are in here are HB, so I switched to H, which I think should be a little bit ever so slightly like softer because this is kind of stabby on the pages, I almost feel like. So yeah, hopefully that will be good. For some reason it's like taped down, like the packaging must have like broken or something and they were just like, just tape it back together. So weird. Okay, and then tomorrow I think, or at some point this week, I'm getting more tabs. They didn't all come together, different warehouse or something, I don't know. And it should be a lot more colors and more like subtle colors because these are quite bright. So that'll be exciting. I'll have some fun new tabs to use for the next book that I annotate. But I've only read a little bit so far today, not so much to update on. I finished the chapter that I was on last night and I've really only read like 15 pages today. So hopefully I will have some more time in a little bit to get into this. But yeah, we're about halfway through and the tabs are looking very satisfying and I feel like I've been able to read a lot more deeply than I normally would. All right, another quick update. I am now at page 273. I have to say I didn't remember that it took them so long to leave Rivendell. There are only about 125 pages left and we have not left yet, so that's interesting. The tabbing is continuing to go well. I feel like in the last couple chapters I've had slightly less than tab, but they're doing a lot of like talking and stuff, so there's not too much like crazy prose because we're just like, people are saying things about what's going on in the world. Although there has been enough that I am also like already like only have 2 green tabs left. So that's awkward because I bought more thinking that this would be enough and apparently it's not enough. So I'm either going to have to use another color, although I'm already using all these colors for something, or I have some more tabs of a different like type arriving today and there might be some green ones in there that I can at least use. Hopefully they're similar enough that, I mean really it only needs to look similar like from this angle, so hopefully I can find something that's kind of like a bright green and that I can use because I don't want to buy more of these ones again, you know? So yeah, hopefully I will be able to finish this today. But yeah, still enjoying the annotating process. So I have about 40 pages left and I got some new stickies, so I think I'm gonna be able to use this green color to match the other green I was using. And yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and try to bang out the last 40 pages now, and then I will come back and we'll do a little review of what my experience annotating my first book was like. All right, so I'm now finished the annotating process for Fellowship of the Ring. And as you can see, maybe not that well from here, I went kind of crazy on the annotations. So I have so many stickies. I ran out of the ones that I was using for prose 3 separate times. So there are a few variations on the green in here, but that's okay. I don't think it's too noticeable. And I mean, I'm probably gonna be the only one who ever really looks at it closely. So yeah, so for my final thoughts on the annotating process, as I've said, I really enjoyed it. I will say that it significantly increased the amount of time that it took me to read this book, which I guess is kind of like the point, because one of the things I was really looking for was to be able to get more out of the book in terms of like analyzing like which parts of the prose I really like, which parts of the world building I felt were very effectively and well done. And so that takes more time when you're trying to like look for those specific things. And I did feel like by annotating, like putting the little stickies and like making little notes, I was able to, or I like encouraged myself to look for those things more actively, and then I'm able to notate them. So if I want to come back and look at the elements that worked really well in this book, I can just flip to the tabs really easily and see what I said about them at the time, because I was kind of leaving little like comments on like why I thought like this specific piece of world building was effective. One thing I will say, the only kind of negative sort of thing that I experienced was I kind of was feeling like there was a certain amount of pressure that I probably created for myself to have like a certain number of tabs at the end. So I'd be like reading and be like, oh, it's been like a couple of pages since I tabbed anything. Like that means I'm not paying enough attention and I should be like putting a tab in, and I would start like actively looking for things to tab, which is like, I guess not specifically like bad, but also like I want to look for the things that I actually like find really interesting or really stand out to me. So if I'm actively looking at things with the intent of tabbing them versus trying to read the story actively and then just note down the things that actually get my attention, then I think actively looking to tab things might kind of make it harder to do the second thing, because I'm just trying to tab things and not trying to tab things that are actually valuable, if that makes sense. I don't know, I feel like I kind of rambled a bit there and maybe didn't get my point across, but yeah, that was kind of the only negative for me. I really enjoyed like putting all the stickies in, making it look pretty, and personally I do feel like I got a lot out of this, and I'll be able to look back at this next time I read it, or if I just want to reference some prose kind of elements. One of the things I noticed is like just how often he describes things with like human characteristics. So like the mountains have knees and the river is like happy and all that kind of thing. And I felt like that really works, at least specifically with like this world and story, because it really made the world feel kind of like alive and makes the world feel like its own character. And then other thing is that the tabbing kind of like brought to my attention more is I had it in my mind that he described the food they're eating a lot more. I think I might have mentioned this already, but he does talk a lot about eating and like the act of eating, like talking about hobbits sitting down to eat all these times, but he doesn't actually describe what they're eating most of the time. There are a couple of red tabs, but I was definitely expecting there to be a lot more descriptions of the actual food, so I guess I kind of made that up for myself. But yeah, that has been my experience annotating my first book. I definitely recommend you give it a try if you're wanting to get a little bit more out of your reads, maybe slow your reading down a little bit so that you can appreciate your reading more. It's definitely, I think, an effective way to do that. But yeah, that is all I have for you today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.